Guys.
Thank you.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are we?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
I mustn't grumble. I mustn't grumble. Where in the world are you?
I'm currently coming to you live from my bedroom.
Fantastic. But there's bunting.
Yeah, that's bunting from mine and Amber's wedding.
Wow. But you've been married a while.
Yeah, it stays there, just in case I need to remember my name.
Oh right. Fantastic. Very good. I don't have bunting. I'm feeling incredibly inadequate.
Well, we can sort that out. I mean, you've got a poster behind you. That's enough, isn't it? Surely.
I've got various posters. Just one of which is on display. If I move this way a bit, you'll see a few more.
I feel like your branding isn't quite. You need to have a "Wish My Life" poster, surely.
Well, there is elsewhere here, but I thought since I thought I wasn't going to rearrange the decorations purely to suit the subject of the conversation. I thought that
might your commitments waning.
It is. I'm sorry about that. But thank you to everyone watching. I mean, we're kind of chatting away quite merrily here, without a care in the world. But of course, we should be chatting to you lovely people out there in the dark, as Norma Desmond would say. And I suppose it's apt that I've integrated a quote from a musical into the discourse already, because we're going to be talking in a couple of moments about a show with lots of quotations. We're just going to give people a little bit of a chance for the next minute or two to get logged on. It is lunchtime, so we'll give people a chance to finish making their sandwiches, I suppose. Have you had your lunch yet, Chris?
I have. I've just had it. I'm currently just editing a new little bit for our Instagram takeover on King's Head Theatre.
Oh yeah, and where can people find us on Instagram, Chris?
So we are Wish My Life, or no, Like a Musical 2021. Yeah. It's right. It's changed multiple times. We're Like a Musical 2021 on Instagram, but today and for today only, we're also taking over the King's Head Instagram.
Excellent.
Which is at King's Head Theatre.
Brilliant. So in this day and age where we know that people like to be watching multiple screens at the same time, because no one can watch a television program without also tweeting along, you could be using one device to watch us on Facebook. You can use another device to follow our Instagram takeover, and I suppose you could really do the whole social media. The word's gone out of my head. The three do get the, what's the word? I can't believe
trifecta.
No, go the can someone put it in the chat? Make it a it's not a threesome. Make it a hat trick. You should know that. Isn't that?
I don't play football.
Well, it's not just football, is it? It's cricket and everything.
I'm the token sports personality here.
There we are. On Twitter, we're Like a Musical, aren't we?
Indeed. Well, to be fair, everywhere we're Like a Musical because we are indeed a musical. But yeah, the handle is Like a Musical.
Yeah, and it's very important to well, I mean, you don't have to type in the capitals, but if you don't put capital letters for the L, the A, and the M, there is the danger that you might think that it's IKEA Musical.
See, I've had that twice today from somebody.
No, really?
Yeah, thinking that we're the IKEA Musical, which, to be fair, I've said is our next show. But
really, we haven't had that mentioned since the very, very, very first day that we were setting up the Twitter account all those months ago, and we were pondering over possible handles.
This person was in Scandinavia at the time, so it may just be that they had IKEA on their brain.
Right, quite possibly. Were they coming to you from the middle of assembling some flat pack furniture?
I don't know what their predicament was, but we can delve into that deeper if the chat begins to dry up.
There we are. Well, it's kind of approaching that time, isn't it?
Is it time to go already?
I think it's 5 past, so I probably need to tell you to put your phone down, don't I?
Let me press send, and then we're all good. I mean, you can talk to people, it's fine. I'll just be here in the background looking pretty.
So I'll be talking while Chris is simultaneously gazing at his phone, but since I'm used to that anyway, You know, this will be
It's business related. It's for the good of the show.
It's for the greater good. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for if you're still here, having sat through Chris and my chewing the fat. Big thanks first of all to the King's Head Theatre for inviting us to do this Facebook Live for the next 25 minutes or so. Do feel free to ask questions and to comment, and welcome one and all. My name is Alexander Bermange, and I am the composer and lyricist of I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical. And
oh, I thought you were going to say and musical director, which you also are. I thought you were just going to keep listing your credits.
No, that's your cue.
All right, yeah, we haven't practiced this. I'm Chris Whittaker, and I am the director and choreographer for I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical.
So what we thought we'd talk about was the making of the show. The show is streaming as of this evening.
How do we feel about that as a term? I don't know that it's a particularly nice term. It sort of brings to mind
what, streaming?
Yeah.
What, as in my nose is streaming?
Yeah, okay. It's not particularly.
Okay. Well, lucky this isn't live. Hey, should we go back over that one?
Yeah, let's try again.
So the show is available to stream.
There we go.
As of this evening, Thursday, the 22nd of April.
2021, just to clarify.
2021. On the King's Head Theatre website, kingsheadtheatre.com. And what we thought we'd do is tell you a little bit about how the show came to be. So I'm going to kick off with a little bit about its creation and genesis. Chris will butt in with questions from himself and from you guys, or just to generally hurry me along when I'm starting to meander or when he's starting to doze off.
So on to our second question.
And then I'm going to ask Chris to take over and tell us a little bit about what he brought to the project. Firstly, at the Edinburgh Fringe, the most recent one, which is in 2019, and then the transition from stage to screen. The genesis of I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical really is in a lot of the solo performances that I was doing several years ago. My background is partly in writing musicals and music and songs for theatre, and partly in writing comedic songs, partly for BBC Radio and partly for various members of the West End fraternity's solo performances. And for some time, many people have been saying to me, why don't you do a live show or a series of live shows of you singing your comic songs? Up until then, I'd only really performed any of my comic songs myself on the radio. I'd never done them at the piano in front of an audience. And so that's exactly what I did. But because for my first one, you know, it was the first time I'd done a complete show, I wanted to get a couple of guests, members of the West End fraternity who'd I'd worked with, who'd appeared in the show that I'd written, and who could bring a little bit more of a physical performance to the proceedings. They wouldn't just be stuck behind the piano. They were both female. There'd be, you know, so there'd be a bit of variety there. And they were people who could really, really, really sing. And I wondered what songs I could give them to do. The ones that I did were very much either ones that I'd written for the BBC or ones that were very much in that style. And when I was wondering what songs I could give them to do, I thought, well, they're musical theatre performers. I'll write a couple of songs about being a musical theatre performer, which is what I did. And they went down extremely well. And then over the course of the following months and the next year or two, as I was giving more of these performances, I was getting other people to guest. And I started writing one or two more songs about being a musical theatre performer. And those songs seemed to really go down very well. Round about the same time, a show of mine was performed on a cruise. And I was on board for a couple of weeks. And every evening, we'd all have dinner together. The cast and creative team. And almost without fail, passengers on the cruise would gravitate towards our table and ply members of our cast with all manner of questions as to their day-to-day existence of their being our cast members. In terms of when they're in a show in town, for example, they seem to think they were ferried from their front door to the stage door by a chauffeur-driven limousine. They seem to think that when they were on tour in a show, they were put up in 5-star hotels. They seem to have lots of well-meaning preconceptions and misconceptions. And that really made me think that now I'd started with writing some songs about being a musical theatre performer, maybe there would actually be enough fodder for a show about musical theatre performers that hopefully would be enlightening and informative for lay people, relatable for people in the industry, but also give me the opportunity to utilize not only my skills as a comic songwriter, because I wanted it to be funny, but also my abilities as a musical theatre writer, because it would still be a kind of musical, and it would all be very heavily inspired by musical theatre, both musically and lyrically. So I went about concocting this show. The way I went about it was picturing the life of a typical musical theatre performer. So starting at drama school, ending with past it diva, or has been, or never was, and just came up with these ideas about possible songs. And I, for example, wanted there to be a song about auditioning. I wanted there to be a song about doing an exhausting dance routine. I wanted there to be a song about understudying, about doing an onstage kiss with someone you can't stand, about pre-performance rituals. And then I reached out to many of my musical theatre friends, my musical theatre performer friends, I should say, as I went through the show bit by bit, and said, do you have any funny experiences of auditioning, of doing an awkward onstage kiss with someone, of the various scenarios that I'd dreamt up? And the real life experiences they gave me provided me with a lot of inspiration. So then the songs that I created were exaggerated for comic effect, and heightened, and in one or two cases a little bit extreme, but they are all absolutely rooted in reality. And funnily enough, some of the most unrealistic sounding experiences that friends of mine had, unrealistic because they just seem so extreme and so hilarious, they made it into the show, and they are completely based on truth. And then the show had a couple of outings in London, very much in a cabaret setting, where space didn't permit for that much movement, particularly, or that much of a physical production, although there was an element of that. And between those two incarnations, we made some tweaks. Fortunately, the reaction was very positive. In fact, the second stint we did was never planned. It just was hastily arranged because the first stint had gone so well. And then after the second stint, the show was beginning to gather momentum, and adding to our clutch of great reviews, we'd also garnered an award. And lots of audience members were saying, this feels like a show that would do very well in Edinburgh at the festival. And that's when a name came into my mind, and that name was Chris Whittaker.
You thought, I know someone who can ruin this show.
Yeah.
And what a job we did.
Yeah.
So yeah. So then so obviously Edinburgh was organised in terms of a venue was sort of found, and we were very, very lucky to be at the Underbelly and be up there. And we had a really nice venue in Bistro Square. I always get worried about saying that I'm going to end up saying it wrong. Bristow Square. So we were up there and we began plotting. And obviously, originally, the show was not an hour long, as Edinburgh shows kind of have to be, unless you've got a budget that's endless. So we kind of began a process of whittling it down. I unfortunately had never seen the original production, but had heard all the tracks and had a full sort of play-by-play of how each song sort of scored on your laughometer, as it were. And we sat, I believe this one was at the Welcome Collection up in Euston. We sat over a pot of tea and a biscuit and sort of went through.
It's the devil's in the detail.
Well, exactly.
I'm glad that we're getting those very essential elements of the story in.
Well, I think it's the only time we didn't eat at Cafe Nero.
That is true. That is true.
Are we still on track to say it in every interview we do? Yeah, I think we are. So the elusive sponsorship is still, awaiting.
We're working on it.
But yeah, so we kind of went through, and it was a really hard one to try and whittle it down, because essentially the show works on the premise of everyone has a number of solos, and there are, I think originally everyone had 3 solos roughly in previous outings, and then there's a couple of group numbers and a couple of duets, and it was trying to find a way that we could make this show a little bit more like a musical, for want of a, I think I've heard that phrase before. So trying to make it into a show that had not necessarily a story or an arc, but had some form of form essentially to it. So that is an element that the show didn't necessarily have before, and how each person can have a song at the beginning of the show that kind of introduces them. Then we hit a couple of group numbers and then a song again later on as a solo. I'm picking which ones fit together nicely to create the funniest show, because essentially that was what we were going for, but also the show that has the nicest through line that we could possibly manufacture. And so we sat there for quite a while. I think we were going through, and some decisions were really difficult, and we didn't really have a cast in mind at this moment. I don't know that we'd necessarily done auditions for the show, so a lot of it was kind of relying on the material, how it had been done by the very prestigious cast before, but knowing that none of those cast would be rejoining us. And so we picked and we settled on what we thought was the best sort of collection of numbers. And then we went into auditions, and we managed to get together our wonderful cast for Edinburgh, all put together of some brilliant West End performers. And then we rehearsed it, and we had a luxurious 2 weeks of rehearsal to put together this 60-minute show. And then it went up, and we were very nervous. There was a lot of phone calls between Alex and I, and emails shared about how's it going to do, what marketing strategies we can play out. Neither of us had been to Edinburgh before for the Fringe, and certainly not done a show there. We were very lucky to have our associate director, Damien Sandys, who I believe to the industry is known as Mr. Edinburgh, for his huge success taking Shakespeare for breakfast up there every year. And he was there to guide us through the Edinburgh experience. And we went into the first previews thinking, if we can get, half an audience for these first previews and get a bit of word of mouth, then this could be successful. And from that very first night, when the sold out sign went up on the board, I can't remember where the board was, that board you sent me a photo of every night.
It was in Bristow Square. Well, actually, there were boards all over Edinburgh, in fairness, but there was the one that I was sending you the photo of was the board and the screens in Bristow Square.
Yeah, so we went up on that on the first night of the sold out board, where all the sold out shows go, and it kind of helps to create a bit more word of mouth. And every night after that, we were incredibly lucky for the entire run. We featured quite high up on that board as a sold out show every night, and we garnered 20 5-star reviews, and that wasn't just being selective of the ones that came out that were 5-star. That was kind of our be all and end all, was these 20 reviews that came out, all of them hitting 5 stars, and all of them incredibly generous about the show and sort of the work that we'd all put into it. We featured as pick of the Fringe a number of times, and we were nominated for a couple of awards while we were up there. I personally think cruelly we didn't win, but that's by the by. And so yeah, kind of this show that we loved and had created and thought stood half a chance of not being a flop at the Fringe, suddenly became a word of the Fringe and a show that everyone was desperate to see.
Now I want to ask you something, Chris. Before I do, just to remind everyone watching that if you've got any questions, feel free to ask, and we will endeavour to answer them as best we can. But what I'd like to ask you, Chris, is then your process about taking it from stage to screen, particularly so suddenly, as it were, in that, in short, the King's Head had seen it in Edinburgh, had loved it, and they approached us not all that long ago with details of this very exciting season of filmed productions, and we came on board. But then that's a completely different process for you as a director and choreographer in many ways, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think if we look back to when the initial offer came in and we started thinking, is this doable? I think it's actually only 5 weeks from then till now, of which part of that was spent thinking, are we nuts for doing this? Can it be done in the first place? Can it be achieved with the original Edinburgh production? So first thing we did was check the cast availability, and unfortunately for us, two of the cast members from Edinburgh weren't available, but the fantastic Charlottes, as they're now known, were available, and we were incredibly lucky to then also gather Luke Bayer and Lucas Rush, who came to join us in this production as well. So we had a cast in place, and we began looking to make sure all the songs still worked and were still sort of necessary within this production. And then we tried to not do it for the screen. I think that was my biggest thing, is that the whole point of, and also from the King's Head as well, that it wasn't about doing a filmed version of I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical. It was about doing a theatrically staged version that just so happened to be filmed and put on onto a streamed service. So that was the main thing for me. But then also when we got there and we were in the space, realizing that actually there are some differences with doing a comedic show to no audience, and having the audience sat in their living rooms and not having the time for interaction and stuff. So that was a big process for us. But having seen the edit the other day, I think we've achieved it quite well, and I'm really looking forward to everyone seeing it as of today. It is now live and out there today. We just had a question in from, I think, a good friend of mine. I hope it's the same person, Alex Jackson, wonderful director, who has asked, Chris, can you tell us more about choreographing a show for a fringe space, some of the challenges of that, and how you overcome them? I can, Alex. So, uh, so choreographing in terms of generally for a fringe show is a wonderful challenge in that it's a new space. It's not There's not a budget where you can just throw everything at it and hope that costumes will cover the show. And it was very much like doing this. We ended up taking it up to Edinburgh with 2 stools that we got from a wonderful gentleman up in Edinburgh for a bottle of red wine.
2 bottles of red wine.
2 bottles of red wine, 1 per stool. Yeah. And the promise of a couple of complimentary tickets, which I don't even know if he actually...
No, he paid. Bless his heart. He paid to come.
Well, there you know. It's more than some people did.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so choreographing it, knowing that you don't have a budget for set, you don't have 101 ensemble, or, you know, however many 42nd Street ended up having, being able to come on and fill the stage and make it a spectacle in that sense. So you have to really think about how you work it and how you make the most effect of what you're given. Again, as in Edinburgh, I was very fortunate to have a cast that were incredibly, you know, open to my suggestions and went along with it and helped me to create this show that has elements of choreography that the show didn't have before, and gives a more rounded picture of what life is like as a musical theatre performer, especially in numbers like A Step Too Far, where it is about, you know, an overzealous choreographer throwing his weight around. And I'd like to think that I truly embodied that whilst creating that number.
Yeah, you're able to draw on your own experience.
Oh, of course, 100%. Life is nothing but imitation, is it? So I did that, and I think that's the best thing to do with choreography for a fringe show, is to just realize that you're working on a limited staging and you're working on a limited budget timescale compared to the bigger productions, and use that to your advantage. Make it not so big, not so shiny. Keep it small and intricate, and the audience are able to see the little details. So the more you can pay attention to those rather than the bigger picture, I think it works in your favor. So having really intricate footwork or really lovely little moments in the background that the audience being so close can see and enjoy more than they would on the Drury Lane stage, I think really, really helps. So I hope that answers your question, Alex. Anyone else, feel free to throw them our way.
Yeah.
How did you find the transition of writing and the process of writing, knowing that you wouldn't be able to get an instant reaction from an audience? How did you find that?
It was disconcerting. I'm not going to lie. Certainly, when we filmed it, because obviously we filmed it as live, and so I knew the spots that would normally generate guffaws from our experience in Edinburgh. And yeah, the silence was a bit disconcerting, but fortunately considerably less disconcerting than it would have been had there been an audience there who were that silent, which fortunately we never had in Edinburgh. You mentioned restricted timescales. I know that we've only got about 5 minutes or so left. So shall we do a shout out? I know we've mentioned them in passing, but to our wonderful cast, especially just mentioning the Charlotte's surnames, we are blessed on that front with Charlotte O'Rourke, who, if you've seen Mamma Mia in the West End or on tour, you may well have seen in it. Charlotte Hanstein, great veteran of the West End, having been in shows like Bat Out of Hell and 42nd Street, and on tour in productions such as Rock of Ages and We Will Rock You. As Chris said, they joined us having done the Edinburgh run. Lucas Rush had done one of the London runs, and we're blessed to have him on board. Recently, you may have seen him in Rock of Ages or Thoroughly Modern Millie or American Idiot, or Luke Bayer, who's recently given award-winning performances in both Everyone's Talking About Jamie and Fiverr. So we were blessed to have them.
And also just to add that we were joined in this production by the incredible lighting designer Clancy Flynn, who came on board having never seen the show, only seen a video of it from the Edinburgh production, and they worked some magic on the day, creating our wonderful lighting states that we had for the filming.
Yes, I'm really excited for everyone to see it. What's nice about it is, it's not one of those productions where there's going to have been lots of jiggery pokery behind the scenes. It's not one of those that was in the can from months ago. We literally all came together, and because of the restrictions and parameters of the production, it was reassembled in a very, very, very short space of time. And I'm really proud of all of our team for what
we can confirm there was no jigging or poking going on at all.
Thank you. And so we're really excited for everyone to see it. It would be lovely to know that in a post-COVID world, there'll be a chance for you to see the show on stage again in this country. At present, the only time you can see it on stage is in Seoul in South Korea, which is a territory where, as many of you may know, the theatre industry has largely managed to continue virtually uninterrupted by COVID. But assuming you're not watching us from that part of the world, or are fluent in Korean, for the time being, this streamed version is what we have to offer you, and that we think you'll enjoy. Chris, is it giving you the taste for maybe going behind the camera again, rather than just being in the stalls barking at cast members? Is it giving you a bit of a
not particularly. I really enjoyed it. It was a wonderful process, but it's very different. It was very much enjoyable, and I'm really proud of the product that we've created, and it's amazing to have the show out there for a future audience, and an audience that's further afield than we were able to reach in Edinburgh. However, nothing will replace obviously live theatre, and having the cast performing for you live on stage. And I don't know, it feels, if anything, more nerve-wracking doing it on film and knowing that it's out there. I feel, even though we got all the amazing reviews in Edinburgh and we did the success of the performance out there, I feel more nervous releasing this one into the world than I did for Edinburgh. But
the thing about film is nothing is tweakable. It's done and it's dusted, and you can't go back and change it. And funnily enough, there are also far more people involved, whereas in Edinburgh it was very easy to implement changes. Now there's obviously our job that we do, but after that it's in the hands of all kinds of other people, brilliant people, but other people who are in charge of the sound and the technical side of things and the camera angles and all of those things that we have absolutely no part in. So it's kind of placing an awful amount of trust in those people, but then again, it enables us to do our job and to let them do theirs. So hopefully all is good. Before we close the session, thank you very much to everyone for joining. We ought to remind everyone that KHTOnline is every Thursday at 1 o'clock live on Facebook. So if you've enjoyed watching and hearing us wittering on today, then you'll be able to see and hear other creatives witter on this time next week. Or if you haven't enjoyed seeing and hear us today, then the chances are that you'll enjoy them rather more. I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical is available as of this evening until the 12th of May to stream. You'll find all the details at kingsheadtheatre.com. You can find the production on Twitter at Like a Musical and on Instagram at Like a Musical 2021. Chris, what have I omitted to mention?
I don't think that's anything.
Is that it?
Oh, if you sign up to be or purchase a premium member ticket, there's some exclusive behind the scenes footage from the filming and interviews with the cast and creatives. If you were sort of dangerous enough to want to hear even more of what we're talking about,
then you can see what goes on behind the scenes of a show that goes behind the scenes of the musical theatre industry.
It's very true, but to be honest, you don't see very much because most of us are wearing masks who are behind the scenes.
Very true. But I think you've often described it as kind of a love letter to musical theatre, haven't
definitely.
you? And so we like to think that if you are interested in musicals, even if you're not interested in musicals, the lovely thing that we got from our Edinburgh people is it seemed to appeal equally to people who loved or hated musicals. Because on the one hand, it is knowingly sardonic and satirical about musical theatre as an art form, but equally, as you say, it's a love letter to the form. There are lots of Easter eggs, both musical and lyrical, and indeed also choreographic. So if you know your musicals, you'll be able to hopefully nod in recognition at some of the little quotations we've got from
just as a disclaimer, there's not actually any Easter eggs in there, which we've had to clarify to people before when saying that.
That's very true. But plenty of those to enjoy. And of course, one of the lovely things about the way this is being streamed is that it's on demand. So once you've bought a ticket, you can see it as many times as you want. So if, for example, in the opening number, which is called The Opening Number, you didn't realize first time that every line of music is actually a musical quote from a different opening number from a different musical, you'll be able to go back and watch it to your heart's desire until you've spotted them all and also picked up on all of the little choreographic nods to famous routines and steps in different musical opening numbers. So that's about the opening number. We should probably get on to our closing remarks, shouldn't we?
Final statements.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.